Iran's parliamentary speaker is urging security forces in the country to deal harshly with protesters. He warns that protests over the death of a woman in police custody could destabilize the country. And this is coming one day after demonstrations were held around the world in solidarity with Iranian people fighting for their freedom. These demonstrations were sparked by the death of Mahsa Amini. She was arrested by the country's morality police, apparently for improperly wearing her hijab. Some of the biggest protests took place right here in Canada, including in St. John's, Montreal, and suburban Toronto. That massive protest in Richmond Hill was partly organized by our next guest. Kaveh Shahrooz was an organizer of that demonstration. He's also a lawyer and a senior fellow at the Macdonald-Laurier Institute. Kaveh, do we have you?
You do have me today, yes.
Okay, terrific. Well, Kaveh, thank you for making time for us today. And I asked if we have you because we were actually supposed to talk to you yesterday while you were in the midst of the demonstration. But there were so many people, so many cell phones that we actually could not technologically connect with you. So tell me about that experience. 50,000 people estimated out on the streets of Richmond Hill together for one cause.
Yeah, 50,000 people was the police estimate that we received. It was exhilarating. It was thrilling. It was a little frustrating that I couldn't speak with you. But I will tell you that, I'm part of an organizing team. There are a lot of people involved in planning this. So, a lot of kudos to many people. We had thought that about 10,000 people would show up. When we were ambitious, we would dream about maybe 15. But as the day got going and more, I would say probably even an hour before the march started, we had hit our target already. And it just kept growing and growing and growing. And it was really a statement, I think, by the Iranian Canadian community, but there were also others from other communities there. Speaking about a need for change, for speaking up for the protesters in Iran, and for fighting for women's rights in Iran, and for just the dignity of Iranian people.
Talk to me about who else showed up, because I'm glad you pointed out that it isn't just the Iranian diaspora. This is really a cause that's been picked up by ordinary citizens and also by politicians. Who showed up for you?
Yeah, so in terms of solidarity, we had a number of speakers, and we're grateful to them. In terms of solidarity, for example, we had the president of the Ukrainian Canadian Congress. We're so grateful to her to come and express a message of solidarity between Ukrainians in Canada and Iranians in Canada. In terms of politicians, we invited from politicians from all levels of government. At the federal level, we invited the leaders of the three major political parties. The leader of the Conservative Party of Canada changed his plans for the weekend and came, and we're very grateful to him for having done that. We issued an invitation to the Prime Minister and to the Foreign Minister Joly. Regrettably, they didn't come, and they didn't even acknowledge our invitation, and that's been a real disappointment for us.
That's part of an ongoing sense of frustration I hear from you and a number of organizers of the protest, not just about the demonstration, but about specific things you're calling on from the Canadian government. Talk to me a bit more about that.
Yeah, it's a real frustration. There are some key demands that we have, and the Prime Minister and the Foreign Minister have made rhetorical commitments about them, but they've taken no action. So some years ago, the Prime Minister and his cabinet all stood up in Parliament and accepted a motion to list the notorious Revolutionary Guards as a terror group. And ever since then, this file has been dormant. They've taken no action on it, and they've never really given much of an explanation why. Iran, a couple of years ago, shot down a flight, a lot of your viewers will remember, shot down a flight full of innocent civilians, including many Canadians. We want the government of Canada to take this case to the civil aviation body that can sort of oversee it and take it to the Hague. We want the Canadian government to support the families as they take this case to the International Criminal Court. Again, the government keeps saying, we're committed to these things, but never actually takes any action. I hope they change their ways. I don't want to sort of be impolite we obviously respect the Prime Minister and the Foreign Minister, but we want them to back up their rhetoric with actual action.
When those protests are taking place around the world yesterday, the conservative estimate in Los Angeles was 20,000, 50,000 in Toronto is really quite unbelievable. Do you think the regime in Iran is watching that? And if so, what are they thinking?
Well, of course they're watching it. The Iranian regime has been incredibly good at monitoring what's happening in the diaspora, and that's one of the reasons why so many in the diaspora have been so fearful for so long. So they've certainly seen the footage. I think everyone that follows Iran has seen the footage. I don't know what they're thinking, but I suspect that they're trembling because they know that their days are numbered.
You know, Kaveh, something stood out to me while looking at the videos of the protests. So there's the Iranian national flag, which is the official symbol, but we saw a number of flags with the symbol of a lion on it. Can you explain to me what the significance of that image is?
Sure, I'm glad you asked that because a lot of non-Iranians wonder about what they see at these protests. So Iran has traditionally had a flag that had a lion and a sun on it, and this was the flag of monarchists, of constitutionalists, of right-wing parties, of left-wing parties. This had been the national flag. When the revolution came in 1979 and religious dictatorship took over, they attempted to erase Iran's identity, and they brought in a new flag that has the words Allahu Akbar, God is great on it. The language used on Iran's flag is Arabic, which is a language that not very many Iranians actually speak. So, I mean, I think it tells you something about how they view the Iranian nation. So as a form of symbolic protest against that, a lot of people you will see in protests will bring the old national flag as saying that we want to be connected to the Iran of history, not this 40-year period where the theocracy has been in power.
I really do want to make that distinction clear to folks at home because they often think the Middle East is the Middle East, it's one language and it's one culture, and people in Iran speak Farsi. They have a distinct culture. They had an indigenous religion, Zoroastrianism, which was driven out. The only place that's really practiced in any numbers now is in India, ironically, because so many people sought refuge there. But so much of the identity has been taken up by this very intense Islamic identity, which is not indigenous necessarily to Iran. So I ask you now, in the days ahead, when the news cycle moves on, when perhaps not as many people might be paying attention, what do you think is going to happen?
Well, first of all, I hope the news cycle doesn't move on too quickly. We had a rally of 50,000 people in Toronto yesterday. I expected that to be on the front page of every newspaper in this country. It's not every day you see a crowd of that size. I'm disappointed that we weren't, but I hope that the media will do better in the future. If the media attention moves on, it doesn't matter. The Iranian people are going to keep pushing. They are going to push against the dictatorship. They're going to push against the Islamic Republic, and we in the diaspora are going to be their voice, and we're going to keep at it until Iran has democracy, women's rights, human rights, and becomes a prosperous, peaceful nation.
Kaveh Shahrooz joining us from Toronto. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Natahsa.